Good afternoon and welcome to the Jazz and Heritage Festival. This is the last panel for today. I have to just let you know we have 3 panels a day here looking at the connections between Haiti and Louisiana. And we started with looking at the historical development of the country of Haiti and looking at the revolution and how the mass migrations created so much of a different culture in Louisiana, not only doubling the population, but also having a different political system, a different like educational system, literary areas, music, and religion. We had a panel on religion, voodoo. So you're making it in on the end here, but I think it will be just as good as all the rest. And this is learning about the beading tradition, but we're looking at the beading tradition in various areas here. We have indigenous tradition with Grayhawk. At the same time, I'll just introduce the panel members for you. Grayhawk is here, and you've been out to the festival before. He has coordinated the Indian village, so to speak, for the last almost 20 years. He's been around a long time. And it's just, and hopefully you have had a chance to look at some of what is going on there too. They've been having Indian powwows and various panels and just showing you a lot about the Indian culture, particularly that in Louisiana. And next we have on our panel is Nancy Josephson. And she's going to be looking at the Haitian tradition of voodoo flags. And she has a book out, and the book is called Spirits and Sequins. And she will probably share some of that, some of the information from her book, but also she has some wonderful flags to show us and to talk about. The next on our panel is Irving Banister, and Irving is the game flag for the Creole Wild West New Orleans Mardi Gras Indians, and he's going to be sharing the tradition of Mardi Gras Indian beading. Well, not only is he a Mardi Gras Indian, but he's also a musician. He's a percussionist extraordinaire. He plays with a number of bands around town, which will be given. He has had 3 gigs already today, so we're just happy to get him to the stage in one piece. And last we have Cheryl Dixon, and Cheryl is an art educator. She's also an artist, and she's the former chair of the Dillon University Art Department, and she's going to pull some of these things together for us today as an artist and as an art educator. So we're going to start, as I said, with Grayhawk, and they were there before any of us, his ancestors. And we're going to just look at beading in various ways today. We know that it's a very powerful adornment for many cultural groups, not only the ones we have here represented, but also for all over the world. It empowers people, it heals. There are so many aspects of beads, and they are very important. And basically, we don't even know when it's the you might say the beginning date or the origin of many of them, because they are so portable and they move from one place to another very easily. So people are moving them around, and so it's very difficult to tell. Although I think Grayhawk has some information that he's going to share with us that he's worked with in the traditions of the Houma Indians as well as the Choctaw, and he says he's both. So I'll give it to Grayhawk.
Well, sorry about my voice. I've been talking for the past 3 days, but I think I can make it through this.
Keep the mic close.
My name is Grayhawk, and I am Choctaw and Houma. And throughout my life, I've actually experienced beadwork, but I've also studied beadwork as Southeastern Native. I do know a little bit and extensive about other tribes in the United States, but most of the stuff that I've done has to do with Southeastern Native Americans. Years ago, the first beadwork that was being done here in the Southeast region was usually done with seeds, not small little seed beads like we know today, but they would use seeds, and they'd use pods to make beads out of. They also made wooden beads. They also made a lot of beads out of shell. Shell was one of the biggest I guess the materials that we had in this area. It was also a big trade item. Beads were, especially for us here down on the lower coast, we made a lot of our beads out of shell, and we would trade with groups that were above us that didn't have these shells. And it was a great trade item, because if you didn't have it, you would love to have it, because it would make great necklaces. It would make great earrings. Earrings are very popular with us. So the beadwork was very, very important. It was also very spiritual. Most of the beadwork that we used was done, very seldom was it applied to the clothing itself. It was usually applied to adorn your outfit, as far as making collars. And some of the Choctaws still do that. They, instead of actually applying it to the outfit themselves, they actually make collars, and they actually make bandoliers and things that go on top of the clothing, because it has to stay, to them it says it stays separate, that they could wear that with every outfit that they put on, and each one had to do not only with a spiritual aspect, but also showed your family, your clan, and who you are. And so that way it had to be something that could be taken off and changed with every outfit or every type of occasion that you would encounter. Later on, when the Europeans came here, they did trade beads with us. The glass beads were very popular, and then all of a sudden sea beads came in. And that's pretty much what you see like in Moderator Indians and a lot of the different, what they call, even today, the Native Americans that come out here from different places, they will use seed beads, and originally they were Czechoslovakian seed beads, they were called, and they were really made out of seed, and they were dyed. But then they also developed a bead that they sent to us that was glass, and those were very popular. But again, we didn't apply them to our outfits. They were applied to our bandoliers, and collars were made, and also today even some of our we have what we call princesses for each front. They even make the headpieces that are all beaded. Like I said, it's part of the outfit. It is not the outfit. And, keep going. I want to make sure. Yeah. The beadwork, like I said, the bandoliers, that especially if you look through the Southeast, every nation, the Choctaw Nation or Muskogee Nation, you had the Seminole, you had the Creek, you had the Chickasaw, you had the Homa, the Ofo, all the Muskogee nations used the beadwork, and it was actually, most of the beadwork originally was taken off of the stuff that you saw in the mounds. Like, for instance, one of the insignias that you saw beaded on some of the bandoliers is something like I have on my arm, which is a hand-eye. And a lot of people look at these designs and they look at them and say, hey, it looks like it's Mayan. Now this dates back 2,800 years right here in Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama and Florida. And so a lot of our designs are very intricate. They're very, very, almost, like I said, you can look at them and people mistake them for Mayan. And you would see that on our bandoliers, and you would see it on some of the adornment that we wore.
Okay, I think we'll move from the indigenous Indians to the black Mardi Gras Indians. And this is Irving Honey Banister, gang flag of the Creole Wild West. Would you talk about beading in your tradition?
Yes, my name is Irving Honey Banister. I'm a Mardi Gras Indian of the Creole Wild West, which is the oldest documented Mardi Gras Indian tribe. Beading, I did not read up on any beading. It just was a way of life. I started at the age of 6 years old, and over the years, I watched my peers and my aunts and all of them, they sewed, and they always told me that I would never have to sew. And tribute to the Native Americans, I've never picked a needle up a day in my